Mr. Smith molested a 4-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, he was convicted after trial of unlawful sexual contact under Maine law.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That was the charge, Senator.
Right. Mr. Smith molested a 9-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, again, he was convicted of unlawful sexual contact against 2 children. In that case, I did impose the sentence the state requested.
At oral argument, this is how Mr. Smith's conduct was described. Quote, you heard this testimony. All of the abuse is done in the same fashion. Smith would rub his fingers in a circular motion on the vagina of each child, and he did so repeatedly. Now, where I come from, we call that sexual abuse. You can pretty it up all you want to, Judge.
Senator John Kennedy delivers one of the most devastating cross-examinations in Senate confirmation history, exposing Judge Lopez's controversial sentencing record involving child predators. The exchange gets heated when Kennedy reveals the judge can't even remember the name of Micah Smith, a man who molested 2 young girls, ages 4 and 9. This isn't just another confirmation hearing, it's a masterclass in holding judicial nominees accountable. Watch as Kennedy systematically dismantles the judge's defenses, confronts her with her own words calling a child molester someone with a lot of good in him, and forces her to admit embarrassing facts about light sentences that sent the wrong message to victims. This video captures the full exchange, with everyone talking about judicial activism, victim rights, and whether our justice system has lost its way. Kennedy pulls no punches in this confrontation, leaving the judge struggling to defend her record. Let's dive into the main video.
You have more sympathy for the criminal than the victim, don't you?
Senator, I worked on behalf of victims of crime zealously as a prosecutor. As a judge, I listened carefully to understand impact on victims, and I have always take that into account.
Do you know Micah Smith?
Michael Smith, Senator?
Micah, M-I-C-H.
I don't believe I know a Micah Smith, Senator, no.
Okay. I bet the victims of Micah Smith remember Micah Smith if you don't.
Senator, there was a defendant I sentenced named Michael Smith.
Mr. Smith molested a 4-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, he was convicted after trial of unlawful sexual contact under Maine law.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That was the charge, Senator.
Right. Mr. Smith molested a 9-year-old girl, didn't he?
Senator, again, he was convicted of unlawful sexual contact against 2 children. In that case, I did impose the sentence the state requested.
At oral argument, this is how Mr. Smith's conduct was described. Quote, you heard this testimony. All of the abuse is done in the same fashion. Smith would rub his fingers in a circular motion on the vagina of each child, and he did so repeatedly. Now, where I come from, we call that sexual abuse. You can pretty it up all you want to, Judge. This is what you said at Mr. Micah's sentencing. These are your words, not mine. What I can say, you said, is that this is a very tragic situation of a person who has a lot of good in him. A lot of good in him. Having done a very reprehensible thing to 2 young children causing extreme damage. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, in that case, I imposed the sentence the state requested.
Did I read that, your quotation correctly?
Senator, that I think is a portion of what I said at sentencing. My focus was on...
But the words I read, are they correct?
That's what was reported in the paper, Senator. I have not seen a transcript of the sentencing.
I bet the victims remember, Judge. You might have forgotten, just like you forgot his name, but I bet the victims remember. And then you handed down a sentence. You gave Mr. Smith 12 years, but you suspended 6 of them, didn't you?
Senator, that was at the recommendation of the state because
But it was your ruling. Did you? Is that an accurate statement of your ruling?
Senator, I accepted the state's recommendation that 6 years should be suspended so that Mr. Smith would be required to participate in sex offender treatment.
I appreciate the lengthy explanation, but I think it's a pretty simple question. That was your sentence, right?
Yes, I imposed the sentence the state requested in that case.
Are you familiar with the Bangor Daily News?
I am the Bangor Daily News Senator.
Right. Did you read the article they wrote, quote, "Light sentences send a message that domestic violence does not matter," end quote. You remember that article?
I have read it, Senator. I believe it mischaracterizes a case that is
That
described.
article was about you, wasn't it?
My recollection, Senator, is that it described several different cases. The case that I worked on that was described there, the defendant in that case was acquitted by a jury of the most serious conduct, and that was not reflected in that article. And so
the newspaper got it wrong.
that was an op-ed that I believe misunderstood what happened, which is the jury acquitted the defendant of the most serious conduct that he was charged with. I was not the fact finder in that case, and so at sentencing, I was bound by the jury's verdict.
Let me ask you, I'm going to run out of time here. I wish I had more time for you, Ms. Campbell, but I've seen a lot of activist judges, and I'm not saying you're the most activist, but the list you're on, it sure doesn't take long to call the roll. Let me finish with this question. I'm going to end as I began, Judge Lopez. You have more sympathy for criminals than victims, don't you?
Senator, I have the support of the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence and the Maine Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I believe that support is a reflection of the work I did as a prosecutor, as well as the care I take with cases involving victims as a judge.
You're embarrassed to answer my question, aren't you?
Senator John Kennedy delivered a masterclass in accountability that every American should witness. In an era where judicial nominees glide through confirmation hearings with carefully rehearsed talking points and political cover, Kennedy did what few senators dare to do. He made a judge confront the real-world consequences of her decisions. His interrogation wasn't political grandstanding, it was a moral necessity. When Judge Lopez couldn't even remember Micah Smith's name, Kennedy exposed a systemic problem plaguing our justice system. Criminals are remembered as complex individuals deserving sympathy, while victims become forgotten statistics in case files. Kennedy's brilliance lay in his preparation and precision. He didn't rely on vague accusations or partisan attacks. He brought receipts, court records, newspaper articles, the judge's own words from sentencing hearings. When he quoted Lopez describing a child molester as having a lot of good in him, he revealed the twisted priorities that have infected our courts. What kind of judge looks at a man who sexually abused a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old and finds goodness worth highlighting? Kennedy forced America to confront this uncomfortable reality. The senator's refusal to accept sanitized legal language was equally powerful. When Lopez hid behind terms like unlawful sexual contact, Kennedy translated it into plain English: sexual abuse of children. This wasn't cruelty, it was honesty. Victims and their families don't get the luxury of euphemisms. They live with the brutal reality every day. Kennedy ensured that reality wasn't whitewashed in a Senate hearing room. Judge Lopez's defenses crumbled under scrutiny. She repeatedly tried to deflect responsibility, claiming she merely accepted the state's recommendations or was bound by jury verdicts. But Kennedy understood what many Americans instinctively know. Judges have discretion, and how they exercise that discretion reveals their values. A sentence of 12 years with 6 suspended for a repeat child predator speaks volumes about whose suffering matters most. Kennedy's final question, asking if the judge was embarrassed to answer whether she favored criminals over victims, was devastating precisely because it was unanswerable. Any response would have been self-incriminating. Her silence was more eloquent than any defense her advocates could muster. This wasn't about denying anyone a fair trial or opposing rehabilitation. It was about priorities. It was about ensuring that when judges weigh justice, the scales aren't tipped toward perpetrators at the victim's expense. Kennedy stood for those voiceless children, for families destroyed by violence, for a justice system that should protect the innocent first and foremost.